So this past weekend, Alexander Gustafsson fought Fabricio Werdum in his first return since retiring last year, and he was returning at heavyweight. A lot of questions, and we got a few answers this weekend. I think a lot of us forgot Werdum's magical jiu-jitsu ability because we've been seeing K1 Werdum for a while. We thought he was a little washed. He's not, and he's like he's a bad stylistic matchup for Gustafsson. It was mostly a stand-up fight for a minute or so. A distance striking match with Werdum throwing some leg kicks and Alex throwing out the jab, snapping his head back a bit, keeping the distance. And then Werdum got tired of that. He got a little frustrated and went for the single leg. Gustafsson stopped the single leg. He stopped it pretty well. He actually defended it, trying to take the back. He fell in a back take, and Werdum used it to dump him and come out the back door. He used it as like a sweep, kind of, when Gustafsson went for like the neck crank and came out the back door in like a deep half kind of sweep. It's like a common escape in no-gi a lot of people see. But yeah, he swept him, and then he used that scramble to get to Gus's back, and then we know the rest. Gus defended the back pretty well, but the armbar was pretty nasty. Oh, and we do need to note how good Werdum's armbar is. Go watch Vinny Magalhaes versus Werdum if you really want to see one of the nastiest armbar attempts in grappling MMA, whatever. It's just nasty. But all in all, it doesn't look that bad for Gus. He'd been retired, obviously, rusty. I mean, you take a year off, and who knows how much he trained after he announced he'd retired. He looked pretty dejected after the Smith fight, which he didn't look terrible in either. I mean, he lost clearly, but I mean, Smith was on the rise, and it was just an unlucky bad fight for him. They happen. But we know he was returning at heavyweight, and he'd be a little rusty. This would be a new situation, bigger guys, because he's used to being like the biggest guy. Jones, maybe a little bit bigger in some ways, but he was among the biggest light heavyweights. This is Alex's third loss in a row, but the last 3 losses are pretty elite fighters, at least at the current time. We have John Jones with his TKO, I believe, in the 3rd round in that title fight, the rematch or whatever. Yeah, it was a rematch. Then we have Anthony Smith submitting him, again, a guy who had just fought for a title fight and is clearly at the top of the division. Even with his recent loss to Glover Teixeira, he's clearly elite, at least right now. A whole different video, like an amazing rise, seeing him from Strikeforce, middleweight, like that is chaos. And then this most recent loss to Werdum, who is, I think a lot of people don't get, he is a bad matchup for Gus. Gus's weakness, by far, in his fights has been jiu-jitsu. That doesn't mean he has bad jiu-jitsu, but look at all of his losses, like the Phil Davis loss. It's like historically, he's gotten better, but his biggest weakness is his jiu-jitsu. His wrestling's gotten much better. He's had good wrestling exchanges with some of the elite wrestlers of, kind of both divisions. But Cormier, he did a lot better than several fighters have. Jones, he took Jones down. He's done very well against wrestlers as he's gotten better. But the grappling, we don't get to see it much because usually guys don't get him there. But when they do, he has some struggles there. He really struggles with backs, like getting his back taken. And Werdum's the best jiu-jitsu guy in this weight class. It was going to be rough for him if he got a dominant position. But just want to review that. I don't think things are as bad for him, and it's a fresh new weight class. You can kind of erase the other 2 losses. A good reason why you can erase kind of those losses, or he's going to have more leeway with the UFC going forward, is he's by far the most popular Scandinavian fighter. Sweden, Finland, Denmark, like the whole Northern European area. He's got to be like the most popular. He's super dynamic, super fun. People love his personality. He puts on good fights. I don't know, he's super likable. So he's by far the most popular and one of the most popular European fighters by far. So he's going to have some leeway, and he's a fresh new face in a division that's consistently filled with waning talent at times. We've had a decent resurgence lately at heavyweight, but historically it's been a so weight class. It's been fun, but like talent is usually thin because there's so few men there. So Gus coming up is going to give him some leverage, if you know what I mean. So let's take a look at the landscape of the heavyweight division for Gus and what kind of fights he can expect potentially going forward. There's a lot of heavyweight matchups already scheduled. Like Dos Santos is fighting, Rosenstruik is fighting, Shabil, can't say his full name, Cyril Gane. We've got the heavyweight title fight with Cormier and Stipe. He's not there yet, but I'm saying lots of the division is taken up. But we have 4 fighters. We have 4 that I think are strong options for him if we're going to be pushing him still further, because Werdum was in the top 15. even though he said he's not signing again. So retiring, going to Bellator, Ryzen. We don't know what he's doing. But these are 4 guys that are in the top 15 to top 20 area that should be fun fights for Alex, and will give a more accurate reading of where he is in this division and see where his future is. So the first one is Walt Harris. Walt Harris, I mean, a lot of us know his story, his daughter, the terrible story about his daughter. I won't go into that, but he's been through a dark personal situation. He came back and looked really good against Overeem early on. He actually looked better than I think I've seen him in a long time. But in the end, he did lose to Reem, who there's nothing wrong with losing to Overeem. Alistair, no matter the problems you see with him, his chin or the style changes he's made, he's still an elite heavyweight. He finds a way to win, and he found a way to win. But Walt Harris is still at a high-level heavyweight, and he presents an interesting challenge for Gus because he's a bigger guy. He's predominantly a boxer. I think that's his background specifically. But he's been adding wrestling a lot more, so it could be a fun where Gus has to worry about the takedown, but maybe not so much the jiu-jitsu. Ground and pound, obviously. He's a big guy. Heavyweights hit hard, so you always have to worry about that. But it'd be a fun striking match because I think Gus might have a speed advantage, but Walt probably has a power advantage. He's substantially large, especially in the shoulders. I think everyone noticed how wide Harris's shoulders are. So that's the first matchup. Could be real fun. Both coming off losses, but both should be safe in the division. Yeah, it's a good matchup. The next one would be fellow European, the super tall Alexander Volkov, who's coming off of a loss to Curtis Blades. Yeah, he's coming off a loss to Curtis Blades, who wrestled him hard, but he had his moments. And I think that what we saw from that fight is that it could offer a dynamic fight for Gustafsson. And I think this might be the most difficult striking matchup Gustafsson would have based on Volkov's technical ability. He's the tallest guy at heavyweight, right? I mean, Struve, but I don't know what Struve's doing. I forgot if he's still fighting. I'd have to go check. Don't want to say he's retired, but he was retired, the heart issue. But yeah, Volkov's one of the tallest guys, and he knows how to use his reach pretty well, and he's very good at striking, very dynamic. It would be a very interesting test for Gustafsson, and I don't think he's going to have to worry about the grappling too much. I don't think we're going to see a lot of wrestling. If anyone, I think we would see Gustafsson go for the takedown on Volkov. But that's a really good fight that could give Gus a new look, give Volkov a new look. They're both, again, coming off losses, so kind of makes sense. They're both also probably safe in the division. Volkov's not going anywhere. He's pretty consistently, since he came over, done pretty well. This could push Gus a lot further because Volkov's one of the highest in the rankings on my list here. So this could push him up in some dangerous territory with the elites of the heavyweights, but good fight. The next one, Marcin Tybura, big guy, like all of them. He's a little bit thicker, more of a bulky heavyweight. He's a powerful guy, but he has more of a kicking game. From what we've seen, I mean, he's got hands, he's got knockouts, and he's got good grappling. We've seen him get some takedowns in some fights and take people down. He's big on kicks for a heavyweight, which I think Gustafsson could really take advantage of, because the kicking game at light heavyweight seems a bit higher level. So, I mean, obviously power probably lower generally, speed probably higher at light heavyweight. I think he could exploit that, maybe get some takedowns of his own. But Tybura is a strong guy. We've seen him mount good guys, get some good takedowns, but he's not really known for that. He kind of does it last resort, or is just to mix it up to get people thinking so he can use his kicks more. I think Gus would be looking to counter a lot on Tybura. A lot of wait for the kick attempt, because Tybura doesn't do tons of combinations. He does kind of go at you. He does some aggressive combos, but a lot of his kicks are like one and done, so he can counter that pretty well. So expect that could be a pretty good fight. Finally, my personal favorite pick, but maybe the most dangerous fight for Gustafsson, is Augusto Sakai. He's a pretty strong Muay Thai striker at heavyweight. He's a little wild at times, but in his last fight looked very, very, very controlled. He's got a knockout over Marcin Tybura. He's a big guy, big Brazilian. This could be a really fun fight. It's in my opinion, the most dangerous fight in terms of, I think a knockout on either end is very likely. Sakai has really heavy hands. He's a very varied game. That's something, again, he's going to be like Tybura, but I think he's much higher level. I think Sakai is like Tybura in that he's got a very good kicking, but he's more well-rounded. He's a more dynamic striker, in my opinion. Very good elbows, very good knees. I think he's an overall more complete fighter than Tybura, at least in the striking. Grappling, we haven't seen loads of from him. So I think this is the most dangerous and the most interesting fight. Now, this could be pushing Gustafsson too far, too fast, because I think he's ranked 8th, which is a harder test than I think anyone. Volkov might be higher. I have to go check. But they're both pretty high. But I think Sakai is a more dangerous striker in relation to Gustafsson, mostly because of that power. But we could see a good amount of clinch fighting, which is something I think that Gus would employ. Sakai is very willing to go to the clinch at times, and I think Gustafsson has a very strong clinch game. We saw he was able to hang in the clinch with some of the elites at light heavyweight. Again, different weight class, but Gus can bang in the clinch pretty well. He can really work in there, and he's technical. So it'd be interesting to see if he could exploit that versus Sakai. Not sure. Sakai's like a dark horse of that division who's high up in the ranking but has lower name value. So Sakai might want to fight Gustafsson because of his name value to give him some of that. But he also may not, because it doesn't really do anything for him in the title picture. A win over Gustafsson doesn't get Sakai a title fight next. There's some motivations there. It could be worth his time, and Gustafsson almost definitely would take that fight, I think, just because the stylistic matchup, and it'd be a real test to see, can he do this at heavyweight? In the end, I think we know Gus is not over the hill. I know that was a quick fight, but he didn't look bad in the striking. His takedown defense looked good against Werdum. How many guys does Werdum get their back and they don't get submitted? Like, it's not that common. You know, I mean, it's just the grappling. So, I mean, you can't be too surprised about that. Anyone who did that would have struggled. The response Gus had after the fight was very positive, and I think he understood that that was a very large option. Like, there was a heavy chance that if it went to the ground, Werdum could submit him. There's just a massive discrepancy between Werdum and almost everyone in the division there. So his response is really positive, and he took it in a very on-the-chin way. So I think he's optimistic for the future and will be aware of some of the things he felt, maybe the strength difference, maybe the speed that he's experiencing. And I mean, he was rusty. So yeah, I think those are 4 good options for Gus going forward. I'm optimistic about his chances, maybe not being a champion or anything, but I think he adds a exciting role to the division where he's going to have a lot of fun fights. And if he wants to keep fighting, I think he's got a lot of good opportunities. So yeah, shout out Alexander Gustafsson.